Give you a little bit of background on Kamehameha schools. The school was basically founded by a Hawaiian princess, Bernice Pauahi Bishop. She happened to be the granddaughter of Kamehameha I, and for those of you, this is a little history lesson. Kamehameha I was the king that unified all the Hawaiian islands under one rule. And so basically, as the last Kamehameha descendant, she inherited all these lands, and she went ahead and noticed that when she was born, she saw that in 1831, the Native Hawaiian population was about 124,000 people. And by the time that she had written her will in 1883, there were only about 44,000 Hawaiians that remained in her islands. And so at the time of her death, before her death, she basically realized that education would offer her people hope in a future. And so she left her entire estate, which at the time was about 9% of the total acreage of the Hawaiian kingdom, to found the Kamehameha schools. The interesting note is that I see a lot of parallels between Princess Pauahi and also Milton Hershey School in Pennsylvania, only because she herself and her husband didn't have any children, and they have missions also to try and work with orphan indigent students and use education and residential boarding as part of their mission. Today what we have is a school that's I'm grateful that we're endowed by $11 billion endowment to fulfill our mission, and our mission basically is to follow up on Pauahi's desire to create an educational opportunity in perpetuity for students to improve their capability and well-being, and we primarily service children of Hawaiian ancestry. A little bit more. So basically what that means in terms of the Hawaiian ancestry is that preference is given to students of Hawaiian ancestry to the extent possible by law. And per the princess's will, basically we're drafting our educational program straight from her will. And a couple of components that I wanted to point out: we do have a residential program for students, we do have a day program as well. So we have a mix of students that board at our campus from 7th through 12th grades, and we also have day students that come in at our Kapalama campus in Honolulu, Hawaii from grades kindergarten through 12. Per her decree, we also have students that are of orphaned and indigent status. And students, as I said before, have to apply for admission into our school. So let me talk about where my campus is located in relationship to the others. Kamehameha Schools basically has 3 campuses. Hawaii has 8 major islands, and so we have campuses, K through 12 campuses, that is, on 3 of the major islands: Oahu, Maui, and the Big Island, Hawaii basically. And we have 31 preschool sites. We have 6,900 students that we serve across those campuses, and because of that, the amount of people that we service through our preschool and our K through 12 satellite campuses, basically we're the largest independent school in the United States. Kamehameha Schools, where I'm at the Kapalama Middle School campus, so we're located in Honolulu, Hawaii. My school basically has 640 students in grades 6 through 8. We have 91 faculty, staff, administrators, and dorm advisors. We operate as a middle school, so a true middle school with interdisciplinary teams. So science, social studies, math, and English meet and collaborate together on projects and kind of work to the best interests of their students. We have slightly under 100 boarding students at our 7th through 8 campus. So now that you have a little bit of context about Kamehameha Schools and specifically my school, I wanted to go and talk about our one-to-one learning program. We basically decided to create a program, a one-to-one program, so that we could go ahead and advance the school's mission, which is to advance students of Native Hawaiian ancestry. Because we have the orphan and indigent population, we wanted to make sure that we created a program that would narrow the digital divide for those students. Some of our students come from highly rural areas, some students actually not, but because we have that diversity in our population, we wanted to address that need. We do have students that are in our program that the tuition and the fees are very nominal. They are highly subsidized by our school. And in addition to that, despite the subsidized tuition and fees, students still receive financial aid or scholarships. So we really needed to make sure that we could provide for equal access to technology for our students. Keep in mind also that because our students are coming from various economic situations, we wanted to make sure that we had a robust laptop that would be self-standing. In other words, students would be able to learn at home without having to access the internet, because we are mindful of the fact of some of our students not being able to afford that at home. We also wanted to make sure that in our one-to-one program that students were able to shift from being consumers of information to constructors and designers of information and ideas. And so in the 2006-2007 school year, we developed a plan to go ahead and start implementing a one-to-one program. The really nice part was that this group was highly diverse. I was actually a classroom teacher at the time, representing social studies. We had someone from each of the different disciplines coming in, especially the core disciplines. So we had an English representative, a math representative, and a science representative coming in, along with people from our greater IT department. We had administrators there. We realized that there was going to be a trickle-up effect, so we needed to make sure that we reached out to our high school administrators, and was fortunate to have a high school curriculum coordinator participate in this planning group. The really nice part is the group that convened basically came up with some strategies and a plan for making sure that the program the following school year that was going to be implemented was highly effective and considered every single need for the teachers based on where they were at. And so my support position, as an example, was included into the plan. We felt like we needed to have someone on staff that would be able to support technology integration and kind of manage the one-to-one and the logistics of the whole program. So my position was created out of that recommendation. And then also we wanted to make sure that we had staggered deployments of the laptops. The group, luckily the administrative team was very sensitive to the recommendations that we made, and one included the fact that we didn't feel ready to go ahead and deploy laptops in one school year to 640 students, and so they agreed with our recommendation, which was to roll out the following school year, 2007-2008, with just one grade level of students. So as I mentioned, in the 2007-2008 school year, and then the following year, 2008-2009, we end up having laptops deployed to our 7th grade students and our 8th grade students. What that looks like today is that we have about 640 student MacBook Air laptops on our campus. We have about 75 teacher laptops, MacBook Pros, that are out there. Provided that students are able to fulfill, and parents also fulfill laptop requirements, students are able to take it home for 24-hour, 7-day-a-week use. At the end of the school year, we do roll the laptops back in so that we can make sure that our IT department and our consultants go ahead and image the laptops, make sure that there's repairs if necessary, and we roll it back out to students the following school year. So in terms of our one-to-one learning program evolution, we started off when we first rolled out our program with an acceptable use policy that stated basically that students could use the laptop for educational purposes. And we thought that was really good, you know, that whatever the laptop was used for had to be just related to school and educational, but the unfortunate part is a term like educational can be very loose and not necessarily what we as adults had in mind for what constitutes an educational topic. And so the following school year, basically, we decided in 2008-09 we would implement school-related purposes. So then it's very clear-cut whether or not the laptop and what it was being used for by a student was appropriate or was not. It had to be something that was teacher issued, so an assignment given by a teacher, for example, is something that the student could use the laptop for. What we realized over time was that what we were actually teaching the students was not real good digital citizenship skills, like what to do when they're outside of the classroom. We found that students were, if anything, trying to circumvent what we were saying, trying to hide a lot of the time some of their activity. And so we decided that we needed to be a little more mindful of exploring the gray area. It shouldn't be just cut and dry, but we should give students an opportunity through our acceptable use policy to go ahead and be good digital citizens. So in the 2010-2011 school year, we decided that we would tell students it was okay to use the laptop for educationally appropriate purposes. And what this means basically is that students are using the laptop if a topic that they're looking up or what they're doing is age appropriate, if it's not causing harm to self or others, if it's legal, and if it's comfortable, if they're comfortable sharing whatever they're doing on their laptop with an adult, then that constituted educationally appropriate purposes. So with this shift in our AUP, basically we had to go ahead and be more intentional about delivering digital citizenship. We had to make sure that we role modeled for students, kind of giving them a little bit of defined parameters for social networks like Edmodo. We were trying to teach them about digital ethics through the use of like learner management systems like Blackboard or Google Classroom. And so all of that was set when we went ahead and made the shift to educationally appropriate purposes. The transformation part comes up in that we had a slow evolution in the beginning. There was no requirements for teachers to go ahead and, transform their classroom overnight. So for people that were traditionally using textbooks, it wasn't like they were required to do this major shift overnight to using only laptops. It was a slow evolution, but I think what happened was there started to become paradigm shifts. And what you're seeing here is a chart. We just went ahead and gave out a survey to students. We happened to use Bright Bites. And so what happened was students and teachers were polled, and basically what you see here is kind of the mindset, the perception of technology. And here you can see overwhelmingly that technology use in the class can enhance student learning is something that all of us believe in as one of our core philosophies. That's important because the more that teachers use technology, they tend to have more positive attitudes about it, and then you'll see students being able to use it then as well. So we started to see some shifts in our thinking, and that to me is kind of what started this transformation of our learning in our school. Now we're to the point where there's a high dependency on technology, whereas before people used to be so comfortable with going back to paper, pencil, or textbook or other kinds of print materials. Now there's a high reliance on technology, from learner management systems to collaboration to communication and creativity. We heavily rely on our laptops and the wireless network that we have here. So you can see students are reporting computer use in their classroom almost daily, 97%. And I think the other weekly, monthly would be probably because of some of the classes like maybe PE. We do have a physical education group, and maybe some of those classes don't quite use the laptops as frequently as some of the other classes. The teachers' beliefs about technology are considered more influential than their actual knowledge about technology. So as long as we know that we're working with people that want to go ahead and use technology and find that there's value in it, we can get them to start using it and feel more comfortable with it. The really nice part is that teachers also had a shift during kind of this transformation. They finally realized that they didn't have to be the sage on the stage to know everything about technology. They actually needed to trust and believe that everyone, including teachers, are learners on our campus, and so that would even fall into technology, where teachers needed to be willing to take risks and model the growth mindset for students, and also that they may not know how the tool use or know the application quite as well as the students, but they could use it as a learning opportunity between all of them to learn something from each other. So you see here that we have a high dependence on technology. The other thing that I think is really important are movement from like a slow evolution to kind of now where I feel like we're at a transformation. Now we're trying to leverage a lot of the technology tools that we used, and I think with leveraging the technology tools that we have via the internet and even on our laptop, there's increased opportunities for 21st century skills. I think in the past what happened was you had projects, isolated projects, you know, without the computers that could do maybe one or some of the 21st century skills, but maybe not all of them. So I think now you have a more intentional opportunity to go ahead and utilize things like communication, sharing thoughts, questions, ideas, and solutions with others. You know, there's abilities to collaborate, working together, the creativity, innovation, and the critical thinking and problem solving, all now within one project or even one assignment, more so than you had before. I think the teachers are starting to get to a point also where technology use through formative assessment and summative assessment tools are becoming commonplace. So whereas I used to see a lot of paper pencil types of tests before, or people only conducting summative assessment strategies, they're actually going ahead and using more the technology to collect formative assessment data. And you'll see some examples of that later in this presentation. Examples of communication that we've always done. This is an example of a tuxedo. Students were asked to go ahead and identify some traits of our founder, Bernice Pawahi Bishop, during her birthday celebration. This was a summative assessment piece that they did with her likeness. And then in English class, what you see here is the students had to read Touching Spirit Bear. And students were able to choose a character in the book, and they listed down adjectives as part of their notes when they were reading through the book. And this is kind of their final project where they had to go ahead and create a visual metaphor for their character in the novel based on the adjectives that they took notes on. Okay, and another example here. And the final one. We've always used communication with the laptops. I think we're seeing it more frequently now, where students are becoming the presenters of information rather than the teacher up in the front. So this is a Hawaiian language class that's sharing with their peers about Hawaiian language sentence structures. And this is an example of communication. The math teacher basically is working on a math trail project. So basically what she has the students do is she wants them to get to know some of the buildings, our history. Our campus is rooted in deep history. Even the building names are named after early Hawaiians that were very pivotal in the development of the Hawaiian dynasty, the Kamehameha dynasty. And so if you take a look here, let me go to the link. This is a project that she creates where students are going in and creating their own website. And what they do basically is they use math in the learning of these buildings on campus. So the student is trying to talk about equations and expressions and two-step equations. So what she did was she learned a little bit about the building and had to do some research, and also had to develop a math problem based on that math standard in relationship to that building. And I'll pick one more here. She's learning about, let's see here, geometry, Pythagorean theorem, and it was on a field trip that they went to. So a little bit about their field trip that they took on the year, during the year, and then writing about a math problem based on their experience on the high ropes course at that field trip. So you see collaboration happening more often, and now the nice part is because of the tool and because there's some students that are just not real acclimated to a one-to-one, like I said, we do have some students that are coming from rural areas that maybe have not had a laptop or a device issued to them ever. Students are picking up the charge and becoming kind of leaders and helpers in the classroom, and that kind of, you know, gives them a nice role. It kind of validates the work that they do in the classroom, putting their expertise to work. We also see definitely more collaboration. So what you're seeing is one of many collaboration stations that we have in our Learning Center, which is our library. So students are able to go ahead and project using HDMI cables and talk about their projects and really try to develop the best work that they can together. The other thing that we see often in our school is that the laptop program is helping to extend classroom boundaries. And so what you see here is that students are actually sharing their thoughts and questions via a Google Hangout with crew members on board the hokulea. Okay, so another little lesson. The hokulea is basically a canoe that was constructed using traditional building methods, and they are actually sailing around the world. Right now, I think they're heading in towards Cuba, and they're trying to sail around the world to talk about sustainability. And so our students are actually talking to the crew members about their open ocean voyage and what it's like to use traditional Pacific navigation skills like without instruments, like using the stars, the sun, the ocean swells, and other signs of nature for clues on direction and location at sea. So they're able to kind of communicate that way, leveraging the technology. We see extending of classroom learning outside also with math teachers. Our math teachers actually happen to flip their classrooms. So a lot of them are heavily invested in recording tutorials for students, or some of them will just use free tutorials like the ones uploaded to Khan Academy and the like. And they're able to have that available for students so students can further their learning outside of class. Another thing that we're doing to extend boundaries is that we're trying to get collaboration and feedback from other campuses. And for right now, we're trying to focus on working together. In the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that there's three different classes, three different campuses that we have across the 3 islands. And what we're trying to do is build a network, a stronger network together. And so this is a collaborative project between a teacher at our middle school campus here on Oahu and also one on Maui. And so the task was for students to go ahead and use Edmodo to post up a descriptive writing piece and get feedback from other students in the class. So this is just some examples, and then go ahead and make revisions based on the feedback that they're getting. Another thing that we do to extend classroom boundaries is utilize things like Google Earth, or in this case, it's Google Tour Builder. A lot of our students, because of their financial situation, cannot afford to travel. In some cases, have not even left our island to visit any of our neighbor islands. And so in Spanish class, what she does is she has them go ahead and research a country that they have to travel to, and then they have to create a budget in Google Sheets. She has them then create a tour, and this is what you're seeing now, a tour in Tour Builder that gives more information on their area. And this is an introductory 7th grade class that she sees for only 1 quarter. This is one of the many projects that they do where they have to create the tour. We're trying to explore opportunities for her. It's a little challenging with the time difference and everything. Being in Hawaii, we have such a large time difference compared to everybody else, but we're trying to get to the point where we have regular Google Hangouts and collaborate with other students from across the globe. But one thing this teacher does do for 8th grade is she actually has, because she would have had the students for 7th grade and a great deal of the 8th grade year, she'll work with those students to create a narrated tour. So the students will have to speak in Spanish, going ahead and recording their narration, and include these pictures and information on the tour. Okay, so as I said before, I think what we see now is that more of the projects that we have are isolated instances where you can get like a 4-skill project within just one, 4 of the 21st century skills in one project. So this is an example of biomimicry project where you definitely see the communication, you definitely see collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. And so what they're doing is they're doing a biomimicry project, and biomimicry is basically a kind of newer discipline. It's where you're using nature to find sustainable solutions to human problems. And the interesting part is the students learn about a real-world example of this where in the late 1990s, trains in Japan were so fast that the typical bullet train was causing a loud like sonic boom basically when trains would go through tunnels. And so one of the Japanese engineers started noticing the kingfisher, which is a type of bird that has a really large head but a long narrow beak. And so basically what they did was today's trains are actually modeled off of that kingfisher so that it wouldn't make that loud boom. So what you see here is students actually had to go ahead and identify in a group a problem that they see in the world. And it wasn't narrowed to Hawaii, it's through the world. And basically what they had to do was research things in nature that would be able to solve this human problem basically. And so they, if you can see down here, they went ahead and took a look at a tree, branching pipe systems, and they designed a world that would have kind of like the branches of a tree where you would have these green rooftop gardens, you would have these self-repairing concrete buildings, and it would kind of go into that spiral shape much like the tree. This one here is Wila in Hawaiian is electricity. So basically how you can create electricity, Mamua is moving forward. So what they did was they decided that they wanted to go ahead and create a lighthouse to answer the problem about electricity and not be so fossil fuel dependent. They created a lighthouse, and basically the lighthouse would be generating its electricity through turbines that are under the ocean. And opihi is a limpet. It's basically like a mollusk. And so what you have here is something that was mimicked after this limpet that would be able to attach itself on the ground at the seafloor and be able to generate this electricity for the lighthouse. The other thing we have is we have a heavy use of Scratch and coding. The teachers basically gave a sustainability project to students, and they said that students needed to work together to go ahead and use Scratch to develop a game or animation that would teach people how to take care of the earth. So let me go into it real quick. So this is available via Scratch, which is a free online web tool, and it allows students to just go ahead and drag and drop and develop code. So it gives a little bit of information about preserving the earth and how people might do that. So that was based on the research that the students had to gather. And then the students had to use coding to go ahead and develop this game. So if I take a look inside, I'm able to see all the code that was attached to creating this game. So they have all of this going on behind the scenes. And I can go ahead and play the game, which I'm not very good at. So that's, I won't go through playing it, but basically students had to go ahead and create this game. Another example that we have here, that was a grocery one. This one is to go ahead and have people try to figure out how to unplug all of their outlets so that you're not drawing unnecessary electricity from the grid. So they went ahead and created their notes and information on electricity use, and then they developed this game and original music. And I'm obviously not very good at it, but students are able to go ahead and design their own games answering a real-world problem. So you definitely see the creativity, the problem-solving, and collaboration that has to go on in the games. This is an example of students that are employing those 4 C's. This is a project where students were asked to, again, go ahead and identify solutions in their respective communities. And they had to create a documentary of it and also find out ways to go ahead and address that issue. So I'll play a little clip. Oops, excuse me, let me go to it here. So the interesting part about this presentation is, I mean, and all the presentations that this teacher did was the students had to identify their own problem, had to go ahead and videotape, and she taught students along the way about, you know, angles and camera shots and things. Also how to go ahead and script out and storyboard your video. She talked to students about, you know, etiquette and how you might approach people asking them to go on camera and be your subject for a documentary. So she worked with students along the way, and this was the result, as well as multiple other projects. The cool part, though, was the student was able to get environmentalists. She interviewed a shipyard worker who works at Pearl Harbor, was able to go ahead and interview an environmentalist to talk about what needs to be done to go ahead and get rid of that pollution in Pearl Harbor. And then we have things like, you know, the creativity Minecraft. So this teacher basically went ahead, and I'll play the video that shows what the students constructed in Minecraft. I'm going to turn it off as I kind of talk about this, but basically what happens is that the students actually had to use Minecraft to go ahead and design a 21st century building. So I'm not going to let you listen to the audio part as I'm talking, but just to kind of see what they constructed. And they had rationale for each of the things that you see down here. That's a table. There's a chair that the student went ahead and created in a group. So they're all designing these as group members in one world. Let me fast forward it. They designed a library, and they had that was a viewing screen that they wanted to have. They had to think about all the other 21st century skills that needed to be developed. So in this case, they're talking about a relaxation room so that you would have like a technology-free zone when you need it. For creativity, they actually have like an observation room so that you can be out with nature. They said that the roof area is actually supposed to be a huge projector as well, so that students would be able to kind of lie back and kind of observe like a planetarium, some of the stars and things. So that's what students were given an open-ended task basically, and needed to go ahead and construct in groups and design a world in Minecraft. And formative assessment. Let me go ahead and play this. So the other thing that I'm noticing a lot of the shift happens when teachers are using the tools to design formative assessment and summative assessment activities. I think before there was a lot of summative assessment pieces, you know, like a Blackboard test or, you know, any kind of quiz online. But what I'm seeing now more is people are using different tools to even try to address formative assessment and really create opportunities for differentiated learning. So this was an example of a Kahoot game that people played to go ahead and test students' understanding after a lesson on Charles Reed Bishop, who happens to be the princess's husband, our benefactress's husband. It was his birthday in January, and we usually do a birthday celebration for him. And so we were able to give students a lesson and then have this as a formative assessment piece just to test their understanding, and definitely use that data to instruct future instruction. The other thing that I see a lot of is the use of Padlet or any kind of other exit ticket model. So basically what's happening here is there's a question after a lesson where students have to go on using their laptops and answer some sort of exit ticket question. And so what the teachers will normally do is they'll go ahead and review it afterwards and kind of identify some questions students still may be having or struggling with, or even anything that needs reteaching, and they'll go ahead and modify using that data, go ahead and modify instruction for subsequent lessons. So I think a lot of teachers are tending to use things like Padlet just to gather data on where the students are at. And lastly, I thought it was an excellent idea. I've been doing some Google trainings with teachers on Google Classroom, Google Forms, and Google Sheets and things. And one of the teachers decided that she was going to go ahead and use it as a formative assessment piece. So what she did was, before her swimming unit, she decided that she was going to ask students to go ahead and self-identify where they fell in terms of their comfort level with swimming and their ability level. And then the neat part was, once she had that data, she was able to go ahead and sort the data in the corresponding Google Sheet, and she was able to develop her swim groups so that she would have differentiated groups based on that data. And that was really easy to do using Google Forms and Google Sheets. The neat part was she was able to give a post-swim unit lesson to see if there was growth over time. So, just basically making a copy of the initial form. She was able to go ahead and get this data at the end to see if, students were at a better place after the unit. So I like these examples of using formative instruments like Google Forms or any kind of other spreadsheets. I think it saves a lot of time for teachers. They're always looking for things that are going to be time savers and make learning, efficient and productive. And so I think a lot of the technology tools that we use definitely do help with that. So at this time, I'm basically done with my presentation. I'm not sure if there's any questions out there for me to answer. Hi there.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to submit those now. We have a couple here, and I'll just read the first one off. How do you enforce your appropriate use policy for technology in the classroom?
Good question. So what we do is, we're fortunate to have teachers that have something, it's not quite as robust as an Apple remote desktop, but they do have something called LAN School. So within the classroom, teachers are able to go ahead and monitor students and what they're doing on the laptop. We do in our guidebook say that because this is the school-owned device, that we do reserve the right to conduct random inspections on laptops. And so we do periodically go ahead and do history checks and things for students. We actually also have students, luckily, that because of our digital citizenship program are kind of reporting to each other what they're doing. There's been a case where I think there were falsified accounts created for our teachers using Instagram, and that actually got brought to our attention by another student.
All right, here's another one. How do you handle student privacy?
Student privacy. So on the teacher end, basically, we're trying to make sure that whenever something is posted up to the internet, it's definitely filtered for PII. So we don't want any personal identifiable information going up. So definitely not students' first and last names, definitely not ID numbers or any other sensitive information. And we also make sure that the students are aware of that as well. We have a pretty robust digital citizenship program where all of the students learn things like, online safety, internet safety, your digital footprint and such. So we try to make sure that that's not compromised. The other way that we try to handle it is through kind of closed networks. So the good part is that things like Edmodo or Blackboard are really closed between teacher and student. In the case of Blackboard and Edmodo, you actually can open it up for parents to go ahead and view, but oftentimes a lot of the discussions or things that would involve the entire class are not features that are available to parents, but still gives parents the opportunity to take a look at how their individual student is progressing. So we try to do multiple things to try and ensure students' privacy.
Very good. All right, one more. If you had to roll out another one-to-one deployment, what would you do differently? And the second part is, did you experience any pitfalls that you would now know to avoid?
Oh, great question. This is our 9th year in the program, and it's definitely a work in progress every single year, so we're constantly having to reevaluate, and I definitely appreciate those questions. One of the things that I think that I would do differently, I would advocate a lot more stronger for budget. By that I mean right now the thing that I didn't include in the presentation is that we actually have a 3-year lease cycle. So if you do the math, that doesn't work out when you have a 2-year grade level. So we only have 7th and 8th grade here. So inevitably what happens, which is challenging, is a student next year will get a new laptop. We're on a new lease cycle next year. They'll take the laptop with them up as an 8th grader. Like the laptop will get refreshed for another user to use in the 7th grade, and then in the 8th grade, because that would have completed a 3-year cycle, they're going to get a new laptop as an 8th grade student. Apple had told us from way before that it's probably best for a student to be tied to a device over the course of their 2-year career here. And so that has been a little bit challenging in terms of trying to maintain records and, you know, which user is tied to which piece of damage on that laptop when it's a shared device. So I definitely would advocate for that more. I think the thing that I would do over differently as well is, well, I don't know if there's anything else really that I would do differently. The good part was we did have a group of people that were in charge of planning, and they were the classroom teachers who were going to be the end users in the program and would really have to drive technology integration. And I was so fortunate to have been part of that process, and also so glad that the recommendations from that advisory group were actually included into the rollout plan for the one-to-one program. What we didn't anticipate, I think, was your second question. What we didn't anticipate was that we had IT represented in our group from the get-go, and that was a real blessing because obviously there's things that need to happen with account creations, you know, email accounts, the wireless network and things that needed to be planned out. What we didn't anticipate, and I guess I don't know if you ever could really unless you actually have at it, is the load that it would cause on the network. And so the unfortunate part is that first semester of our rollout, and this was, mind you, only with 7th grade students being on a, you know, all-day scenario in school that first year, we had kernel panics, which was the students would be working on a document or something on their computer, and their computer would basically freeze up. And they lost everything basically at that point. They weren't able to save it or anything. It wasn't a prompt that allowed you to do anything except for shut down your computer. And so that was a little bit of a growing pain. I don't know what Santa Claus did over Christmas break, but something happened where it was self-resolved by the time we came back. But it was months of students, you know, laptops crashing and having to take error reports and locations and things. I had no idea that that was even, you know, going to be something that was going to be a problem. And so I guess the only thing is, to the extent possible, if you could test out your wireless network and maybe, you know, kind of ease into it in the beginning, or really get your technicians to test it out however they have the means to do so, to make sure that your network is going to hold up, that would make it a lot better for you, only because I definitely wouldn't try to go ahead and roll through with a one-to-one if your network isn't going to be robust to handle the load. It's going to cause a lot of frustration on the part of your teachers who are trying to integrate it. One more thing I will say is I definitely would not recommend doing multiple initiatives simultaneous with any kind of deployment, whether it be laptops for the first time or whether it be, you know, a refresh of laptops. I definitely wouldn't do that. One of the things that I shared with people at other national conferences is in our our second cycle of the laptop, so we had been 4th year into our program, we actually were moved into portables because we were having a building constructed. So that was a whole new setup. It was a whole new wireless network. We were in portables, for goodness sakes. And that year, not only do we have new laptops, we were forced into portables, but we also had a new student management system. We also had a new payroll system. And we also had a printer deployment. So I would definitely say that I would not encourage anybody to go ahead and, you need to think about the bigger picture and what, initiatives you're going to be rolling out and what things can maybe, fall off the plate for a little bit and then get added on later, because definitely it impacts people like me who are trying to support all of these initiatives, and definitely the end users that have to try and, work their way through all of the new things that are coming down the pipe.
Well, one last question. Maybe you've answered this in terms of everything you've said so far, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah.
What unique challenges do you face being in Hawaii when it comes to deploying and maintaining a one-to-one program? And perhaps you touched on that, but did you miss anything?
Um, Not quite. I think definitely shipping over, the cost of shipping things over is definitely a challenge for us because we definitely aren't on the contiguous US, so we have to pay more for shipping and have to add that into our budget. The time frame also, we have apparently a slow boat to Hawaii sometimes, so that takes a while for things to get started. We have to be more mindful in our planning and our procurement of things. Um, and definitely the climate here. I mean, I know everybody struggles with climate issues where they're at. I think the humidity and the heat sometimes also contribute a little bit to some of our devices and peripherals. So you just have to be mindful of where you're at and what student use will look like, especially on a 24/7 basis.
Okay, well, I think we're just about at the time limit we normally set for these types of events, 45 or 50 minutes. So I'd like to thank everyone who's been listening for your attendance, and stay tuned as we develop another webinar program. We'll be sure to be emailing all of you that information. And a special thank you, of course, to you, Renee, for your time and your expertise. We greatly appreciate it. And just a reminder again, this webinar will be on our EDU page, which is brenthaven.com/education. And again, if you have any questions, you could send those to my attention or Kelly. Maybe you, Kelly. Kelly at brenthavenhq.com. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll be talking to you very soon.